Essay number 6. Uncomfortable feelings that actually indicate you're on the right path. What if I told you that feeling lost, angry, or completely exhausted might actually be the best thing happening to you right now? What if your most uncomfortable moments are actually signaling your greatest breakthrough? Here's something nobody talks about. Discomfort isn't the enemy of growth, it's the doorway to it. We live in a world that tells us to chase happiness 24/7, to optimize away every negative feeling. But what if we're running from the very experiences that could transform us? Think about it. Every major breakthrough in your life probably started with feeling deeply uncomfortable. That moment before you quit the job that was killing your soul. That conversation that ended a toxic relationship. That decision to finally face what you'd been avoiding for years. Discomfort is what happens when we are on the precipice of change. Unfortunately, we often confuse it for unhappiness and cope with the latter while running from the former. Let me share some uncomfortable feelings that actually indicate you're exactly where you need to be. First, let's talk about when childhood patterns resurface. You know that sinking feeling when you realize you're dating someone who reminds you of your difficult parent? Or when you catch yourself reacting to your boss the same way you did to that teacher who never believed in you? Here's the plot twist. This isn't regression, it's recognition. When childhood struggles resurface in adult life, it's not because you failed to overcome them. It's because you're finally conscious enough to see the patterns. You can't heal what you can't see. These moments of déjà vu are your psyche saying, hey, we're ready to deal with this now. The discomfort? That's the feeling of old programming meeting new awareness. And that collision is where transformation happens. Now let's address that feeling of being lost or directionless. Society has sold us this myth that we should always know where we're going. 5-year plans, career trajectories, life goals mapped out in detail. But here's what feeling lost really means. You've stopped living in the story and started living in the moment. Feeling lost is actually a sign you're becoming more present in your life. You're living less within the narratives and ideas that you premeditated and more in the moment at hand. Until you're used to this, it will feel as though you're off track. You aren't. You're not lost. You're finally found. You're just not used to navigating without someone else's map. This discomfort is the space between who you were told to be and who you actually are. Ever notice how when you start meditating, journaling, or doing creative work, suddenly you can't remember where you put your keys? Or you forget appointments? Basic organizational tasks feel impossible? This left brain fogginess isn't you falling apart. It's your brain redistributing resources. When you're utilizing the right hemisphere more often, becoming more intuitive, dealing with emotions, creating, sometimes it can seem as though left brain functions leave you feeling fuzzy. Things such as focusing, organizing, and remembering small details suddenly become difficult. It's like your brain is saying, we're doing heart work right now. Spreadsheets can wait. This fog isn't a malfunction. It's a rebalancing. Then there are the emotional eruptions, random waves of anger about something from 5 years ago, sudden sadness while doing dishes, having random influxes of irrational anger or sadness that intensify until you can't ignore them anymore. These aren't random. They're receipts, emotional receipts you've been stuffing in a drawer, and now the drawer is full. When emotions erupt, it's usually because they're coming up to be recognized, and our job is to learn to stop grappling with them or resisting them, and to simply become fully conscious of them. After that, we control them, not the opposite way around. You're finally safe enough to feel. Your nervous system is saying, okay, we've got some bandwidth now. Let's process that thing from 2019. The intensity isn't the emotion itself. It's the pressure of having held it back. Let's talk about sleep. Experiencing unpredictable and scattered sleeping patterns is another sign. You'll need to sleep a lot more or a lot less. You'll wake up in the middle of the night because you can't stop thinking about something. You find yourself full of energy or completely exhausted, and with little in between. Add to this intense, vivid dreaming that you almost always remember in detail. If dreams are how your subconscious mind communicates with you, then your mind is definitely trying to say something. You're having dreams at an intensity that you've never experienced before. And what about that intense need to be alone? Remember when every weekend had to be booked with plans? When you thrived on social drama and other people's problems? Now you're suddenly disenchanted with the idea of spending every weekend out socializing, and other people's problems are draining you more than they are intriguing you. This means you're recalibrating. You're not antisocial, you're becoming selective. You're not isolating, you're incubating. This pull towards solitude is your soul saying we need space to become who we're becoming. You might also find yourself downsizing your friend group, feeling more and more uncomfortable around negative people. The thing about negative people is that they rarely realize they are negative. And because you feel uncomfortable saying anything, and you're even more uncomfortable keeping that in your life, you're ghosting a bit on old friends. That discomfort you feel around them isn't rudeness. It's boundaries being born. Here's a big one. Feeling like the dreams you had for your life are collapsing. The job ends, the relationship crumbles, the dream you've held for 10 years suddenly feels empty. A life-changing event is taking place, or just has. You suddenly have to move, get divorced, lose a job, have a car breakdown. Everything you built is collapsing, and it feels like failure. But what you do not realize at this moment is that it is making way for a reality better than you could have thought of. One that's more aligned with who you are, not who you thought you would be. There's a difference between a life collapsing and an illusion dissolving. When the life you plan starts crumbling, it's often because it was built on who you thought you should be, not who you actually are. Sometimes it feels as though your worst enemies are your thoughts. You're beginning to realize that your thoughts create your experience. And it's often not until we're pushed to our wits' end that we even try to take control of them. And that's when we realize that we were in control all along. You might feel unsure of who you really are. Your past illusions about who you should be are dissolving. You feel unsure because it is uncertain. You're in the process of evolving, and we don't become uncertain when we change for the worse. We become angry and closed off. If what you're experiencing is insecurity or uncertainty, it's usually going to lead to something better. When you start recognizing how far you still have to go, it's because you can also see where you're headed. It means you finally know where and who you want to be. You might find yourself knowing things you don't want to know, such as what someone is really feeling, or that a relationship isn't going to last, or that you won't be at your job much longer. A lot of irrational anxiety comes from subconsciously sensing something, yet not taking it seriously because it isn't logical. Having an intense desire to speak up for yourself is another sign. Becoming angry with how much you've let yourself be walked on, or how much you've let other people's voices get into your head, is a sign that you're finally ready to stop listening and love yourself by respecting yourself first. And perhaps the most terrifying realization, you are the only person responsible for your life and your happiness. This kind of emotional autonomy is terrifying because it means that if you mess up, it's all on you. At the same time, realizing it is the only way to be truly free. The risk is worth the reward on this one, always. Here's what all of these experiences have in common. They're all about dissolution before resolution. The old you, the conditioned you, the people-pleasing you, the unconscious you, that version has to dissolve for the real you to emerge. And dissolution feels like disintegration. It feels like everything's wrong. But you're not falling apart, you're falling open. You're not losing your mind, you're losing your programming. You're not failing. You're failing at being fake. So if you're feeling any of these uncomfortable feelings right now, I want you to try something radical. Thank them. Thank the confusion for showing you you're no longer willing to follow someone else's map. Thank the anger for showing you where your boundaries need to be. Thank the exhaustion for forcing you to stop and recalibrate. Thank the discomfort for being the labor pains of your becoming. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. The path to your authentic self isn't comfortable. It's not supposed to be. Comfort is where we go to maintain. Discomfort is where we go to transform. So the next time you feel lost, confused, angry, or like everything's falling apart, remember this. That feeling isn't telling you you're on the wrong path. It's confirmation you're finally on the right one. You're not broken, you're breaking through.